If you were asked to picture the most successful pirate of all time, who would you imagine?
Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the most groundbreaking women whom the history books don't accord the recognition they deserve.
When I'm gone, remember everything it took to get here.
Number 20. Grace O'Malley. Few female pirates in history have gained the same recognition as their male counterparts, and Grace O'Malley is one of the overlooked. Born in 1530 to a noble Irish dynasty, O'Malley showed her fearless spirit early on, cutting off her hair to join her father's sailing expedition.
I think of Grace O'Malley not only as a fighter in terms of being able to use the sword, but I also think she was a very intelligent woman, very much able to use her mind.
She succeeded her father as their clan leader and commanded a fleet that dominated the seas off Ireland's west coast. O'Malley boldly defied the English. In 1593, she negotiated the release of her brother and sons from English captivity by meeting personally with Queen Elizabeth I. Remarkably, she refused to bow to the Queen as she deemed her an equal. O'Malley remains a legendary figure in Ireland, although her exploits are often left out of history books.
Devoutly religious male historians must have thought Grace O'Malley set a dangerous example as a woman who overstepped the bounds of womanhood. The most amazing clan leader and mariner of her time.
Number 19. Rosalind Franklin. While scientist duo Watson and Crick are associated with DNA's double helix structure, Franklin was also a big part of this influential discovery. A chemist and X-ray crystallographer, Franklin was a researcher at King's College in London. In 1952, she and her student took pictures of DNA, including the pivotal photo 51.
The now famous X-ray portrait not only confirmed the double helical shape, but also hinted at its manner of replication. Franklin continued her analysis, unaware that at nearby Cavendish Laboratory in Cambridge, Watson and Crick were working on their own models, but still unable to confirm the helical structure.
Without her knowledge, Franklin's colleague, Maurice Wilkins, showed photo 51 to Watson. Watson and Crick used the X-ray image to support their own research, while Franklin's own research was downplayed. Franklin died of ovarian cancer at only 37 and never lived to see the growing recognition of her work. With awards, buildings, and even a play in her honor, Franklin's contributions to science will always be remembered.
I want people to think about everything that Rosalind Franklin accomplished and how much more she could have accomplished had she not been isolated and marginalized.
Number 18. Victoria Woodhull. Today, multiple women have vied for the US presidency, but none of that would be possible without Victoria Woodhull, who was the first to do so in 1872. A fierce advocate for women's suffrage in labour reforms, Woodhull also supported free love, which championed women's rights to marry, divorce, and have children without government interference.
The general theme of what she was saying is still very applicable today, as far as who is anybody else to say, who is anybody else to judge my love life and who I want to spend time with.
Additionally, she was a pioneer on Wall Street, co-founding the first female-led brokerage firm with her sister, Tennessee Claflin. Together, they also ran a newspaper that once published an expose on the extramarital affair of a prominent minister, resulting in Woodhull's arrest on obscenity charges. Woodhull passed away in 1927 and was posthumously inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame in 2001.
If I had to explain to a student what they should learn in history that isn't actually taught in textbooks, I would say to find the hidden gems like Victoria Woodhull.
Number 17. Nana Asma'u. This Nigerian princess and poet was born in 1793 to Usman Dan Fodio, the founder of the Sokoto Caliphate. In present-day northern Nigeria, Dan Fodio prioritized universal education in his kingdom, and so Asma'u was well educated in global classics and fluent in 4 languages.
She decided basically the way that these men are behaving and fighting amongst themselves, I've got no time for it. She literally started a women's movement of her own.
Determined to pass on this knowledge, she established a network of female teachers who travelled across the Caliphate to educate women in rural areas, who in turn taught others. This became a movement known as Yan Taru, which still exists today and continues to play a crucial role in promoting female education, especially in northern Nigeria.
You have places where women have their own centers, their own Quran memorization centers. They study Maliki fiqh. They have their own they call it a susu in terms of the way they support each other.
Asma'u was also a prolific writer who produced a vast collection of prose and poetry in different languages. Number 16. Maya Deren. Often hailed as the mother of American avant-garde filmmaking, Maya Deren was born in Ukraine and immigrated to the US with her parents to escape anti-Semitic pogroms. She began exploring filmmaking in the early 1940s, using her inheritance to shoot her first film, Meshes of the Afternoon. Deren's work broke away from conventional filmmaking techniques and became known for its innovative editing, visual symbolism, and non-linear storytelling.
One image is always becoming another. That is, it is what is happening that is important in my films, not what is at any moment. This is a woman's time sense, and I think it happens more in my films than in almost anyone else's.
Her fascination with Haitian voodoo led her to document the religion, although she passed away before she could complete the project. It was later released posthumously as Divine Horsemen, the Living Gods of Haiti. Deren helped to establish experimental film as a respected art form, founding the Creative Film Foundation to support independent filmmakers.
Films are way more than just a script. A script is just literature. That's not the movie itself. They have a unique language and vocabulary that has yet to been fully fleshed out. And what I really love about Maya Deren is her work reflects this pursuit of the cinematic language.
Number 15. Mary Seacole. The daughter of a Scottish soldier and a Jamaican traditional healer, Mary Seacole followed in her mother's footsteps and became a nurse. After treating patients of the 1850 cholera epidemic in Jamaica, Seacole sought to apply her skills during the Crimean War. However, she was rejected by the British War Office, possibly due to her race. Undeterred, she travelled to Crimea independently and opened the British Hotel, offering food, medicine and supplies to soldiers.
As well as treating soldiers at her hotel in Crimea, Mary would also visit the battlefront on her horse, taking sandwiches, drinks, bandages and medicines with her.
Despite arriving after the major battles were over, Seacole cared for the wounded and comforted the dying, earning the troops' affection as Mother Seacole. Although her efforts were overlooked for nearly a century, she is now celebrated as a pioneering nurse and humanitarian.
Now, we'll get you a statue, obviously. Yeah, maybe get a university wing named after you. Oh, how would you feel about being featured in an historical sketch show for the BBC?
Number 14. Nancy Wake. This tough-as-nails spy started out as a freelance journalist and ended up as a French resistance hero. In the mid-30s, Wake visited Vienna and saw Nazis assaulting Jews in the streets. From then on, she knew that she had to stop them.
I stood there and I thought, oh, that's dreadful. I couldn't whip a cat. I don't know what, but if ever I can do something one day, I'll do it.
When Germany invaded France in 1940, Wake joined the resistance as a courier and guide for Allied soldiers and refugees. Trained in England, she strengthened ties between Britain and the resistance, and her efforts led to many guerrilla victories.
I was really surprised.
Always on her tail, the Gestapo could never catch the woman they called the White Mouse. Wake passed away in 2011 at the age of 98 and is one of the most decorated servicewomen of World War II. Number 13. Noor Inayat Khan. Not only was this brave woman a British spy, she was also a Sufi princess. Khan was a children's author in Paris when the war broke out and fled to England in 1940.
Although her father's Sufi teachings had made her a pacifist, the tyranny of Nazi Germany made her join the war effort.
She became a radio operator for British intelligence shortly thereafter and was next sent to Paris to work for the French resistance. While many members of her network were arrested, Khan continued to work while trying to evade capture.
When the Gestapo searched her on the train, she gave them a casual tour of her film projector. When an officer spotted her hanging her aerial, she chatted about her passion for listening to music on the radio. and charmed him into helping her set up the cable.
In October 1943, a colleague betrayed her and Khan was imprisoned in Paris by the SS. Even though she faced horrible conditions, Khan defied her captors until the end. She was executed in Dachau, Germany in 1944 and has since earned her place among Britain's wartime heroes.
Noor has been honoured as a hero who waged secret battles behind enemy lines, paving the way for freedom without ever taking a life.
Number 12. Hutaloon. Before WWE divas, there was Hutaloon, a beautiful Mongol princess who happened to love wrestling. A descendant of Genghis Khan, she was a skilled warrior who often joined her father in battle. When she wasn't killing it at the front, she could be found wrestling opponent after opponent.
Hutaloon has grown more fierce with age and more beautiful.
It appears my daughter will never take a husband.
Hutaloon could wrestle anyone she wanted, and she didn't do it just for kicks. If Hutaloon won, she'd get 100 horses. If she lost, she'd marry her opponent. Needless to say, Hutaloon ended up with a lot of horses.
My herds have multiplied, but I will find Hutaloon her match. You should challenge her, Byamba. You are a powerful warrior.
She allegedly married someone she met outside her lucrative hobby and died in 1306. Largely unknown outside of Mongolia until recently, this unbeatable princess wrestled her way into history. Number 11. Wu Zetian. She was the only female emperor to reign in her own right in Chinese history, and a polarizing figure to boot. Depending on the sources, Wu Zetian was either a ruthless woman who wasn't above having her own relatives killed to take the throne, or a highly effective leader who improved the lives of commoners. The truth lies somewhere in between.
This is part of an intentional process, an intentional destruction of vestiges of female power during the late 7th and early 8th century. The Confucian patriarchy striking back and re-establishing normative power.
Wu purged a lot of the competition to become emperor, but also managed to purge corruption, expand the civil service system, and make Buddhism more prominent. She even headed a brand new dynasty for 15 years, which ended upon her abdication and death in 705. Despite her controversial reign, or maybe because of it, Wu continues to captivate us centuries later.
For her entire idiosyncratic, unprecedented political career, defied labels, and for 1,300 years she's defied historical verdict.
Number 10. Bessie Coleman. At a time when US flying schools barred African Americans, Native Americans, and women, Bessie Coleman, who ticked all 3 boxes, faced a slim chance of becoming a pilot. However, she decided to move to France to actualize her dream.
She was a manicurist, but she decided she loved the idea and the adventure of flying.
In 1921, Coleman earned her international pilot's license from the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale, becoming the first African-American woman and Native American to do so. After returning to the US, she became known for her daring aerial shows, which drew large crowds.
She was a small little woman, you know, but she'd go up in that aircraft and she'd do her loops and her flips and, you know, recover from stalls at the very bottom and blow everybody away.
She also challenged racial inequality by refusing to perform for audiences that excluded African Americans. Coleman aimed to open a flight school for people like her, but that dream was cut short when she tragically died in a plane crash in 1926.
A young pilot established a school in her honor, the Bessie Coleman Aero Club. The founder of the club said in his book, which he dedicated to Bessie, that because of Bessie Coleman, we have overcome that which was worse than racial barriers. We have overcome the barriers within ourselves.
Number 9. Ya Asantewaa. As the Queen Mother of the Ashanti Empire in present-day Ghana, Ya Asantewa's primary duty was to protect the Golden Stool, a symbol of Ashanti sovereignty. In the late 19th century, after exiling the king to Seychelles, the British colonists demanded the Golden Stool. This enraged Asantewaa. While some male leaders hesitated, she took charge and led Ashanti forces in a rebellion known as the War of the Golden Stool.
If you
the men of Asante, if you won't go forward, then we the women will. I shall call upon my fellow women and we will fight the white man.
Despite being in her 60s at the time, Asantewaa fought on the front lines, inflicting significant losses on the British side. Although the Ashantis eventually lost the war and Asantewaa was exiled, the colonists never laid hands on the Golden Stool. Today, Asantewaa's bravery and resistance are celebrated in Ghana and across Africa.
Ya's actions are woven into the fabric of Ghanaian, African, and the Black diaspora's history. She literally stands as a symbol of Black power.
Number 8. The Mirabal Sisters. These Dominican sisters, Patria, Minerva, and Maria Teresa, fought the brutal dictatorship of Rafael Trujillo. Through their resistance group, the Movement of the 14th of June, they issued anti-Trujillo pamphlets and planned revolt.
In January of 1960, they called representatives together from all over the country to establish the movement's structure and prepare an uprising. But it was not to be.
Minerva and Maria Teresa were arrested, but were freed after the Organization of American States intervened. Their freedom was short-lived, however. On November 25, 1960, the sisters were driving home from visiting Minerva and Maria Teresa's jailed husbands when Trujillo's henchmen beat them to death. Trujillo was assassinated 6 months later, and the Mirabal surviving sister, Didi, dedicated her life to preserving the women's memory. To commemorate the sisters, November 25 is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. These sisters were not only badass, they're also national heroes.
Their courageous fight for justice has inspired generations.
Number 7. Hatshepsut. 1400 years before Cleopatra, another female pharaoh ruled over ancient Egypt after her husband, Thutmose II, died. Hatshepsut ruled alongside her stepson, Thutmose III, eventually becoming a pharaoh in her own right. Hatshepsut was usually depicted with feminine features along with the king's false beard to show her power.
Hatshepsut also did what previous pharaohs had done. She built great monuments, including a huge memorial temple to herself. Deir el-Bahri, one of the architectural wonders of the ancient world.
Her 20-year reign was mostly peaceful and prosperous. Hatshepsut built many monuments and embarked on landmark trade expedition to the land of Punt. 20 years after her death, traces of her memory were destroyed, with some believing that her stepson, Thutmose III, was to blame. While later research casts doubt on this theory, we're fortunate that enough has survived from her reign so that Hatshepsut won't be forgotten anytime soon.
But once her name was found and reconciled with her image and prosperous reign, she gradually came back to life and assumed her rightful place as one of the greatest pharaohs in Egypt's history.
Number 6. Irena Sendler. When World War II began, Irena Sendler, a social worker for Warsaw, Poland, couldn't ignore the horrors around her. Working with the Polish underground resistance, Sendler helped smuggle 2,500 Jewish children out of the Warsaw ghetto, giving them new identities and placing them in convents or with sympathetic families. She also kept meticulous records, hoping to reunite these children with their families when the war was over.
Jaka jest gwarancja? Jaką ja mogłam dać gwarancję? Ja nie mogłam dać nawet gwarancji, że ja przeprowadzę przez Wachę. Więc ja, idąc do rodziny żydowskiej po dziecko, nie mogłam dać żadnych gwarancji, że to dziecko będzie żyło, prawda?
In 1943, Sendler was arrested by the Gestapo and tortured, but she refused to reveal any information. For this, she was sentenced to death. However, she narrowly escaped execution after the resistance bribed Nazi officials to release her. Sendler's bravery saved countless lives, and after the war, she was recognized by Israel, Poland, and the United States.
Robi się teraz bohaterkę, to mnie to bardzo denerwuje. Bo to nie jest żadne bohaterstwo, to był obowiązek człowieka podawać rękę drugiemu człowiekowi.
Number 5. Ching Si. This former sex worker became one of the most feared and successful pirates of the South China coast. Her husband Cheng Yi was already known as the commander of the Red Flag Fleet. After he died in 1807, Ching took the helm.
She introduced a passport system, which meant salt merchants had to buy safe passage from the pirates. Soon this extended to all types of merchant and fishing vessels. She even set up tax offices to collect fees. Who knew piracy required so much paperwork?
By 1810, she oversaw a fleet of up to 80,000 pirates. No small feat. She also set up a strict code of conduct to keep them in line, unless they wanted to lose their heads. Whether it was Chinese officials, the Portuguese, or the British, nobody could defeat the Red Flag Fleet. When the government offered amnesty to pirates, Qing retired, keeping her loot and running a gambling house. By land or by sea, Qing was unstoppable.
What do I even tell my crew?
That you vanquished mythical creatures to bring them home.
No one will ever believe me.
That's what makes a good legend.
Number 4. Queen Nzinga of Ndongo and Matamba. Born into the royal family of Ndongo in modern-day Angola, Queen Nzinga was privy to military and diplomatic training at a young age. This would prove invaluable in her adulthood.
What would you do if you were in my place?
I would find a way to unite the kingdom. Use all our might to drive the Portuguese back to where they came from.
Nzinga became known for her political savvy and led a fierce resistance against Portuguese colonization. After her brother King Mbandi died in 1624, Nzinga, who had previously negotiated with the Portuguese and spoke their language fluently, became queen. However, the Portuguese, threatened by her policies, backed a rival and declared war on her in 1626. Nzinga responded with guerrilla warfare, forming a key alliance with the Dutch to counter the Portuguese. Not only did she retain control of Ndongo, she later conquered the kingdom of Matamba, uniting the two in a formidable regional power.
Nzinga was a mother of a nation, but she loved her country, and for that she made great sacrifices. But those sacrifices ensured the independence of her kingdom, while the rest of Africa was swallowed by imperialism.
Number 3. Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi. Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi was born in either 1828 or 1835, which means she was likely only 22 years old when she stood up to the British. Lakshmibai was the wife of Maharaja of Jhansi, who died before she could give birth to an heir. Before his passing, the Maharaja named an adopted heir, but the British Governor-General of India refused to recognise him and annexed Jhansi. Unwilling to surrender her kingdom, Lakshmibai joined the 1857 rebellion, mobilizing her own troops into battle. Despite being vastly outnumbered, she mounted a fierce resistance against the British. When Jhansi fell in 1858, she escaped and continued fighting, but was ultimately killed in the state of Gwalior. Her unwavering courage, however, remains undefeated.
We must unite in one incarnation, Virangana.
Number 2. Jeanne de Clisson. This Breton noblewoman's third husband was executed for treason during the 100 Years' War. Jeanne then swore revenge on France. She sold her belongings to fund a small army, fighting on land before becoming a pirate in the English Channel. She and her children reached England, where Edward III is said to have given her 3 ships.
She paints them black and the sails red, and she basically became vengeance incarnate.
Along with her forces, Jeanne supposedly beheaded French nobles herself, always sparing a few to report to the French king. Sources differ on her pirating days. She was at sea anywhere from 5 months to 13 years, but they ended once she married an English military deputy. While much of her life is the stuff of legends, her resolve was all too real.
It became like a ghost story for a lot of like French nobles and stuff. Like, you don't go out in the sea at night because you're going to get killed by the lioness.
Yes.
You know, I thought that was awesome.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications.
Number 1. Amani Reines. The Roman army was one of the most formidable military forces in ancient history, which enabled Rome to conquer many kingdoms. However, there was one that stood firm against their advances, the Kingdom of Kush, led by Queen Amani Reines. After seizing control of Egypt, the Romans attempted to push further south into Kush, but were met with unexpected resistance.
One of the Kushite envoys gallantly presented the Romans a beautiful bundle of golden arrows and said the following words: "This gift is from the Candace. If you want peace, this is a token of her warmth and friendship. If you want war, keep the arrows. because you are going to need them.
Amunirenas launched a bold counterattack, advancing into Egypt and sacking the city of Syene. Her forces managed to hold their ground for years, even in the face of the more expansive Roman army. Amunirenas, described as having only one eye, eventually forced Rome into negotiating a peace treaty, which allowed Kush to maintain its independence and exempt it from paying any tax.
Her leadership, guidance, determination, and grit is second to none when it comes to African queens. And given all that history, I find it odd that her name doesn't roll off our tongue like other African queens.
Which of these powerful ladies do you find the most inspiring? Let us know in the comments below.
Like, I just want to be her, right? Like, I just, even if I recognize that I can't be all that, right? I just like just give me a piece of it.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo. And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.